Stop saying the Democrats and the Republicans are the same. I'm seeing everywhere on social media when it comes to either disenfranchised Bernie Sanders supporters or libertarians who are fed up with the two-party duopoly, or frustrated conservatives who are looking in the wrong places for progressive content. I don't know. That Democrats and Republicans are somehow no different from each other. I want to explain very clearly how this isn't the case, and that one party is obviously significantly worse than the other, and that's where we should focus our attention when it comes to dismantling this two-party duopoly that's strangling our system. So most of it seems to be coming from frustrated Bernie Sanders voters who witnessed him getting screwed over in the primaries in 2020 like I did. Look, I get it, guys. Bernie Sanders was my guy, and I was really excited for him to get in. He was the front runner for maybe a couple months in early 2020, and his policies are by far the most necessary and most needed policies that America has needed for a long time. That's over now. He's not the nominee. Joe Biden is. So now we have a choice. Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And before you say third party, let me ask you what the likelihood of that is of having an impact on the system. You really think that's going to send the message that you wanted to? And at the expense of what? We can compare and contrast Joe Biden and Donald Trump all day. And we'll get back to the third party thing. But do you really consider Democrats as the equivalents to Republicans? In what regard? And to the libertarians who are fed up with Trump, you guys are blue-balled every single election. You guys never get your way. Have you considered taking notes from the Justice Democrats or the Tea Party movement? Why don't you guys just start replacing Republicans with libertarian Republicans? Start primarying neoconservatives and corporate Republicans with libertarians, if that's your ideology. I don't agree with libertarianism, but you're not going to get what you want through a third party, because that's not how the system operates. What everybody needs to understand is that third parties are not viable for a reason. The system is rigged against them, and the only way to get what we want is by primarying the corrupt corporate establishment representatives that are already in Washington. And if you're a conservative that's curious about progressive content, I can assure you right now you're probably not looking in the right places. Because if they're saying that Democrats and Republicans are the same, they're being completely disingenuous. And more than likely, they're only throwing a fit because both parties don't operate in a way that serves the American people. And that's it. You can only make the same segments about how corporations are bad, the military-industrial complex is bad, and that both parties are corrupt, therefore they are equally bad, so many times before all of your content falls flat, grows stale, and does nothing to actually change anything. It becomes obnoxious, excessive, and condescending. So what is the main difference between both major U.S. parties? If you pay close enough attention to both parties, here's what you see. The Democrats are a Hollywood-backed, corporate-backed, Wall Street-backed, neoliberal party whose sole purpose is to maintain the status quo and keep things the way they are, no matter how right-wing things become. They are a center-right party, not a left-wing party. They operate in a way that requires capitalism to thrive. They do the bidding of Wall Street, giant corporations, the military-industrial complex, similar to the Republicans, but arguably not to the same extent. This is through means such as campaign finance, lobbying, quid pro quo, and bribery. I have an entire video about this, about the Democrats, called You Actually Think the Democrats Represent the Left. It's not one of my higher quality videos, but I still recommend checking it out. It goes over the Democrats a lot more in detail. Now, the Republicans are a far-right neoconservative party who are in much greater lockstep and ideological consistency than the Democrats. They are far more structured than the Democrats, and they are far more effective at getting the legislation wanted they pass, as well as appointing federal judges. The Republican Party is a team. They have millions of dollars at their disposal for advertising and are far more influential in media, especially online. And a lot of their money comes from wealthy billionaires, particularly in the oil market. The entire party is far more effective at messaging, even if their messaging is not based in fact whatsoever. They are far better at propagandizing, and they are far better at energizing their base, because all it takes is fear, hypocrisy, double standards, smears, slanders, and lies to whip up their base into a frenzy, and they always vote. The Republican Party is so far right that much of their policies do not even align with the American people most of the time. For example, around like 55-60% of people, depending on what polls you look at, of Americans say we should wait until after the election to pick a Supreme Court nominee. But instead, hypocrites like Mitch McConnell are fast-tracking a nominee in order to turn the Supreme Court into a 6-3 conservative majority, going back on their grandstanding and stonewalling and messaging for 2016 when Anthony Scalia died and Obama picked Merrick Garland as the replacement. The Republican Party today would not be able to operate without hypocrisy or double standards, which are the only two legs that they are able to stand on to this day, as well as the massive convenience of the Electoral College working in their favor the last several elections. Otherwise, they would be an obsolete party by now. If you actually know this and study the ideology and the rhetoric of these Republican officials and many high-up Republican representatives, these people are insane. Like, they should be put into an asylum kind of insane. These people have such a strong religious conviction that they will ignore their own hypocrisy and their own religious teachings in order to get what they want. They want the United States to be a religious theocratic nation and wish to implement it by any means necessary, including authoritarian measures and stacking the courts with loyal conservatives. This is the long game. This is their strategy. They wish to maintain patriarchal dominance and make women subservient to men as wives to their husbands. They want to reverse trans rights, women's rights, gay rights. They want to make our government far more nationalistic and enforce an American-centric education system that will be largely privatized, that they will call patriotic education. You've already heard that term being floated around, or something similar to it. To go off on a little tangent, patriotism is earned, not taught. This is nationalism. The Republican Party will always refer to themselves as haters of big government and supporters of liberty and freedom and haters of socialism, and they will smear anyone who stands in their way as socialists, communists, Marxists, Antifa, terrorists, etc. You name it, no matter what. In reality, the Republican Party leadership actually loves big government. They want to control all aspects of education, media, and any form of free expression. They'll call the left snowflakes, then whine about offensive things on TV or lyrics in songs. They will preach all day about the blessings of free market capitalism and free market economics, but then they'll turn around and give corporations bailouts to the tune of trillions upon trillions of dollars, no strings attached. Then they'll put in place regulation or remove regulation that benefits corporations who then outsource their jobs to places like Asia or Mexico in order to maximize profits and save expenses. This is called wealth distribution. The Republican Party isn't even good at hiding their hawkishness either, because all they do is scaremonger about how bad this country is or how bad that country is, and the necessity of military intervention of some sort. They will endlessly scaremonger every day about the dangers of immigrants coming into our country, particularly from the southern border. But then they'll deny asylum seekers access to the United States, whose countries get destroyed by our invasive foreign policy or our drug war policies, despite asylum seeking being allowed via the Constitution. That's right. Asylum seeking is legal. The moment you step foot on American soil, you have rights as a person, as written in the Constitution. The religious zealousy that drives the Republican Party is so extreme. It drives nearly everything they do, especially foreign policy and our relationship to Israel. Their end goal is to make everything so bad that the apocalypse starts, thus bringing about the second coming of Jesus Christ as foretold in the book of Revelations. I'm not kidding. These are what you call true believers. The strength and power of the Republican Party is not only exacerbated by the influence that they have on media and the cheerleading from outlets that they receive from the likes of Fox News, OAN, Breitbart, the Daily Wire, the Daily Caller, the Washington Examiner, New York Post, even the Blaze, but also by the Democratic Party itself, which always seems to compromise with the Republicans, never vice versa. That's right. The Republicans never, ever cater to the Democrats. It's always the other way around. The Republicans never concede to the Democrats. They've never compromised. It's always the Democrats that have to go to the Republicans. It's always the Democrats that have to change legislation to appeal to the Republicans. Otherwise, they rarely ever get anything passed, actually. Because usually the Republicans just don't accept it, so Democrats have to water everything down. They start from a center position and bargain to the right, thus shifting the Overton window, if you know what that is. The Democrats are weak, and I talk about this more in the video that I mentioned before, titled, you actually think the Democrats represent the left. I'll link it right up here. Suggest you watch it. So if you've made it this far into the video and you're still not convinced about how ludicrous the Republicans are in comparison to the Democrats, I don't know what to tell you. It might be some personal bias or vendetta, justifiable or otherwise, but maybe I wasn't as fully in depth. I don't know. But here's the thing, I hate both parties, and I make it apparent on my channel. But even I can see that one is far, far, far more dangerous than the other and far more prone to fascism. All I'm asking for is a little bit more honesty and consistency. If you really want to dismantle this two-party duopoly, do yourself a favor. Don't start with Democrats. Start with Republicans. And I get it. Neither Joe Biden nor Donald Trump is worthy of a vote. But when you consider just how far right the Republicans have gone, to the point where now our democracy is at stake, and the democratic institutions that separate the United States from being a rogue third world country are in jeopardy, the choice couldn't be any clearer. The conclusion could not be any clearer. The Republican Party has to be destroyed first. But if you're still not convinced and you want to go out and vote third party this November, go ahead, vote green and go, oh, shucks, oh no. So one last thing. If you do plan on voting this November, I would try to go out and do it in person early. If you have the ability to vote in person, do it. Mail-in ballots are going to be a nightmare because of COVID-19 and the meddling with the USPS by the Trump administration. So in order to completely destroy Trump, Biden needs to win in a landslide, or else Trump will challenge it by any means necessary, which he'll do anyways. But a landslide from Biden will make it that much harder for Trump to pull something, which he has signaled that he would be doing anyways. Look, I despise Biden with a white-hot rage, but if the left, if progressives, if liberals, if the working class wants any real future in this country, it's not going to be under another 4 years of Trump, and I cannot stress this enough. We have to overwhelm the vote to stop Trump from trying anything crooked, which he has signaled multiple times that he would do. Every single day of the week, I would rather fight against a neoliberal than a neo-fascist. Or, at best, to be fair, a neoconservative who flirts with fascism. Trump isn't trolling. This isn't someone joking around. This is a man who doesn't know the first thing about politics, the first thing about legislation, or anything to do with being president. This is the guy who's winging it, and has been since the day he announced. This is an entitled demagogue who has been warned about from historians and victims of fascist regimes. This is someone desperate to stay in power, pretending to play it cool as he whines and bitches and moans all day about everybody being mean to him, when he should be leading the country and fixing its problems that are rotting it from the inside out. This is someone who couldn't even say with a straight face to the world, I condemn white supremacy. When it was laid out, it was a layup, a softball question. He froze, he danced around it. Weak. You can vote against fascism and still engage in activism, pressuring the establishment to kneel, but won't be through the Republicans. Thank you guys for watching the video. Leave a like and a comment. Let me know your thoughts down below. I would love to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't. Click the bell for notifications. Follow me on Twitter at Stateless Patriot if you haven't already. And check out my other videos as well. Get out and vote. See you guys in the next one. We have to overwhelm the vote to stop Trump from doing anything crooked, which he has signaled to...